one of any bill more momentous than the European Communities Act 1972 is repealed on exit day. But beyond that, it is possibly not such a dramatic piece of legislation. And in fact, I was quite pleased when the original working title of the Great Repeal Bill was abandoned, because in fact it is not, beyond Clause 1, a repeal bill. In fact, it is the Great Preservation Bill. It carries out a very workaday, almost prosaic function, but nevertheless an important function. And that is to preserve in United Kingdom law the European law that we have absorbed over the last 44 years to ensure that on the day of exit, which will very probably be the stroke of midnight on the 30th of March 2019, Brussels time, there will be a working statute book in this country. Now, I don't believe that this should be a contentious matter. In fact, all members of this Honourable House should be anxious to see that we have that certainty for business and for the citizens of this country when we leave the European Union. And I'm surprised, therefore, that the opposition has decided to put down a reasoned amendment in which it makes it quite clear that it intends to wreck the bill. And I really wonder whether the opposition have given any consideration to the impact that their decision may well have upon the interests of business and commerce in this country. We have got to make sure, Madam Deputy Speaker, that on the day of exit, the statute book in this country works. And frankly, the only way that we can achieve it in the timescale with which we're constrained and which is set out in Article 50 is to have a flexible, pragmatic system such as the system that is laid out in the draft bill, That, of course, doesn't mean that the opposition supinely have to accept everything without possibly considering amendment, but simply to go along a course of trying to wreck the bill, I think, is really quite reprehensible. We certainly have to consider the mechanisms that are to be employed. Listening to the speech of the Right Honourable Member for Holborn and St Pancras, and also to other honourable members opposite, the impression that I get overall is that the concern is not so much about the methodology of ensuring that we have continuity of legislation in this country. It is rather the issue of scrutiny of the measures that will have to be brought forward under secondary legislation. Now, certainly some of these will be very prosaic, very straightforward, and I can't think that anyone would object, for example, to a measure which would replace a European institution with a British institution as needing anything more than a piece of secondary legislation by the negative procedure. But there are some other measures which will certainly be of greater moment. And the Right Honourable Gentleman mentioned today's report by the House of Lords Constitution Committee. There was an earlier report of that committee in March of this year, which came up with certain sensible suggestions for scrutiny. For example, setting up a joint committee of both houses, something that was touched upon by the Right Honourable Member for Broxtowe. And I would have thought that rather than seeking to destroy the bill, with all the adverse consequences that would have on the national interest, members opposite should give consideration possibly at committee stage to putting forward some enhanced form of security of the sort that was contemplated by the Constitution Committee in its report. That, I believe, is the proper way forward. But simply to seek to destroy and wreck the bill, I believe, does nothing for the reputation of this House. And we've heard so many speeches this afternoon about preserving that reputation. I, for one, am happy to support this bill at second reading, and I urge other honourable members to vote for it.